Okay, we're going.
What the moon brings. What the moon brings. What the moon brings. Give me one moment.
HPPodcraft.com.
I hate the moon. I'm afraid of it. For when it shines on certain scenes familiar and loved, it sometimes makes them unfamiliar and hideous.
The moon?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
It's like the moon has opposite powers.
According to this, yeah.
When it shines on girls, it makes them boys. When it shines on dogs, it makes them cats. When it shines on Lovecraft, it makes them outgoing and fearless and accepting of all people. We had a blue moon for New Year's Eve.
We did. It's like the first blue moon on a New Year's in a long, long time.
First blue moon and a blue moon.
Chad, I want to know who you are.
Oh, okay. Well, you got the first part right. I'm Chad Pfeiffer, and you are...
Me, I'm Chris Lackey, and I'm one of the hosts, the co-host, you would even say, of the HP Lovecraft Literary Podcast.
That's right, at hppodcraft.com. And here we would say it is true that the moon can make familiar scenes look sinister. Something about being out in the night, the quiet.
Yeah.
Things do take on a different aspect.
They sure do.
I used to enjoy, being in the neighborhood when I was a kid, going out at night when everything was quiet and, all the houses look different. Of course, they're easier to rob.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
No, I mean, we did plenty of nighttime shenanigans
Sure.
at youth, and everything does have a different cast to it, obviously, because there's no big ball of light in the sky, so there's lots more shadows. Everything's a little bit creepier.
Unfamiliar, for sure.
Sure, and your imagination works overtime on that stuff.
Exactly. That reader that we had today, who was that?
Oh, that is a good friend of ours, Garrett Watley. Garrett is a sound designer here in Santa Monica, and he helped us out with a number of projects, including The Chosen One.
That's right. He's a great guy.
He's awesome, and he's helping us out with this. Good job, Garrett. He's got a wonderful voice. Usually he's on the other side of the microphone doing the recording, but it's good to get him in front of it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Garrett, get in front of it right now. Read us the next paragraph.
It was in the spectral summer when the moon shone down on the old garden where I wandered. The spectral summer of narcotic flowers and humid seas of foliage that bring wild and many-colored dreams. And as I walked by the shallow crystal stream, I saw unwanted ripples tipped with yellow light, as if those placid waters were drawn on in resistless currents to strange oceans that are not in the world. Silent and sparkling, bright and baleful, those moon-cursed waters hurried I knew not whither, whilst from the embowered banks white lotus blossoms fluttered one by one in the opiate night wind, and dropped despairingly into the stream, swirling away horribly under the arched carven bridge, and staring back with the sinister resignation of calm, dead faces.
So what we've got going on here is the narrator, who again is unnamed,
right,
is walking in his garden, which I assume is his backyard, basically. That's what the English folks usually call their backyards. They call it a garden.
Right.
And
Fools.
And he is kind of, things are a little strange. It seems to be a dream. It's not real.
Yeah. The lotus blossoms on his trees are falling into the stream and turning into dead faces.
Yeah.
Which swirl off toward what he assumes is some unknown ocean. He says some ocean not in this world.
Yeah. And so he follows them. He wants, for some reason, he's compelled to find out where these things are going.
Yeah, well, the faces seem to be whispering to him, sadly, calling on him to follow. So he's lured by them, and he runs along the shore of the water, and the walls of the garden have disappeared.
Yeah, they're gone. So it's just an unending forest. The stream goes, far, far away.
Yeah.
It's, obviously, it's a dream. This isn't real.
And so far I'm digging it. This is a really short story. Another dream story of his that I really like is The Thing in the Moonlight.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Because these are less... he has other dream stories where he lays out this whole geography of these dreamlands and all these ancient towns, and there's so much to sort of pick up on there. Versus these, which are more impressionistic and kind of really just paint this surreal landscape that he pulls you into. And this type of dream work I've always been more of a fan of. Right. Whether it's horrific or not, but I like the,
There's something that is really scary about dreams, and it's that nothing's real in the sense of, like, you can't even trust the walls around you. They'll shift, they'll change. You look to see if there's somebody behind you, and then there isn't anybody
Right.
behind you, and then you're grabbed from behind. It's like, how can that happen? It's a
Yeah.
dream. Anything could happen.
And this is a real archetypical dream thing where the hallway seems to go on forever,
Right.
or you
Yeah.
thought that you could get out of some place, and as you walk, you're like in a run cycle in an animation, and the background just keeps repeating itself.
Right,
and repeating
exactly,
itself.
exactly. Or you're moving in slow motion. Like it's like your body's held down with molasses. For some reason, you can't. Or you're trying to punch something or somebody, or there's a
Yeah.
monster, and your arms are so weak you can't do anything.
Oh, that's the worst.
Which I find that's the really horrific nightmares, as
Yeah.
opposed to Lovecraft's other dream stuff, which is just kind of like Middle Earth or something. It's
Right.
very fantasy.
Well, speaking of Middle Earth, though, the dead faces in the water did
Oh,
remind
yeah,
me
no,
of Lord
that
of the
did.
Rings. a
It
little
did
bit.
make me-
I can't help it. Those movies have really arrested my visuals of Lord of the Rings a little bit too, because now when I think of it, I think of the scene from was it the Two Towers when they're going through and
Yeah.
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 Now I just think of that specifically.
There are dead things. Dead faces in the water.
All dead. All rotten.
But he does eventually though get to this vast and nameless sea, or to the banks of it rather.
Well, it goes from the stream
Yeah.
to a river.
Right,
And then
exactly.
the river goes into the sea.
Yes, and the faces disappear as they go into the sea.
Yeah, like supposedly the moonlight, when the moon kind of hits them, they
Yeah.
sort of just fade away. And he
That's
wants,
really creepy image.
he says,
And as I saw therein the lotus faces vanish, I longed for nets that I might capture them and learn from them the secrets which the moon had brought upon the night. But when the moon went over to the west, and the still tide ebbed from the sullen shore, I saw in that light old spires that the waves almost uncovered, and white columns gay with festoons of green seaweed. And knowing that to this sunken place all the dead had come, I trembled, and did not wish again to speak with the lotus faces.
Cool. Well, so there's a couple things there. You're right. It is neat that he wants to catch the faces with a net so that he can talk to them. Like, what if that was your specialty? You were a fisherman. I'm a fisherman. I catch faces. Catch them with a net. Catch them in the wild too. Ain't one of these face farming shops.
oh.
They run nowadays, keeping the faces all penned up together, too close. Feeding them corn.
Nobody wants corn-fed
No,
faces.
I got all natural faces.
The-
Come over sometime, have a face fry. Stop eating those filet of faces. I got the good stuff. I literally could go all day. I will keep doing it.
So, but this is, a more dreamlike stuff. Like
Yeah.
he understands unconsciously or subconsciously that he's in this dream world and he thinks these crazy things. Nobody sees faces in the water and thinks, I'm going
Yeah.
to throw a net and catch them and talk to them. But
Right.
he feels that he can do this in this world, this dreamland.
Unfortunately, the faces are going out to what we just heard there. There's this place he sees old spires and columns almost uncovered. This is a sunken city out
Yeah.
in the sea.
Yep.
And when he realizes that, he says, I trembled and I did not wish to speak again with the lotus faces.
Yeah.
Which kind of made me feel bad for the lotus faces, Once he found out where they were from, he didn't want to talk to them anymore.
Oh, they're
Yeah.
those kinds of lotus faces.
Wrong side of the garden.
Yeah, don't want any part of that.
So, obviously it's a Dagon Call Cthulhu thing
Right.
here.
Another
think it is
ancient sunken city.
About these sunken, undiscovered cities
I don't know.
that he's dreaming about them all the time.
I mean, obviously the oceans are scary and they have lots of secrets, and even to
Yeah.
this day they're unexplored. So who knows what lies underneath?
So from that perspective, it is rife. I mean, it's a good landscape. There's lots of possibilities in the ocean. But maybe it's that, and if you look at the other stories, he just thinks the world is drab. There's got to be more to it.
Yeah.
It can't be just this.
Yeah. No. There's a lot of things. I mean, in our next story that we're going to talk about, sort of Lovecraft's fascination with dreams. I think it becomes a little bit more apparent in that story than this one. But I wonder how unhappy of a guy he really was to be so obsessed with his dreams.
Yeah.
His life was so unfulfilling in some way that he just really longed to go to these places. And it's sort of a sadness. Well, but this particular thing, he doesn't really long to go to it. Obviously, this is the dark half of this type of thing.
The story we're reading, What the Moon Brings. Did we say that at the beginning, actually?
No, we didn't.
But by the way, the story we're reading is What the Moon Brings. I don't know if we said that.
I don't think we did say that.
And then the next story is Azathoth.
Yeah, we're doing a twofer again.
Right.
Yeah.
But hey, we're already into it. So
Yeah,
keep
we're just going. We're just
because my favorite paragraph comes up next. He says,
Yet when I saw afar out in the sea a black condor descend from the sky to seek rest on a vast reef, I would fain have questioned him, and asked him of those whom I had known when they were alive. This I would have asked him had he not been so far away, but he was very far, and could not be seen at all when he drew nigh that gigantic reef.
Now, this is a short story, but still I would recommend cutting that paragraph. It's completely unnecessary. That part is truly like listening to somebody talk about their dreams.
Yeah.
He doesn't talk to the bird.
No. He sees the bird and thinks, hey, I want to talk to it, but then he doesn't. But I mean, a big black condor is kind of evocative, like that image, and it's in the distance. You see this kind of, but nothing really happens with it.
It's just there's this woman I have to talk to a couple of times a week who always says, "Oh my God, you got to hear this story. It's so hilarious."
Yeah.
But she doesn't know how to censor herself.
Right.
So whatever context in which the story happened, I got to hear all of that. Like
Right.
she'll go, all right, me and the kids were at breakfast, and I go, God, I hope breakfast is part of the story. Otherwise, I'm really in for the whole day. Because she will tell you every detail, whether...
yeah, my kids got pancakes. I got an omelet. But so my kid's in there, he's drinking this drink, he spills it on my, you got to clean it up. It's like, is this the story?
Is this the story yet?
No.
Anything to do? Will that
the story's
have
about my Uncle Fred.
Exactly.
My Uncle Fred, which, when the kid spilled a thing on his shirt, which made me think he was drinking orange juice, which is really hard to get out.
Those are the mundane horrors that I think Lovecraft is rebelling against. But no, you're right. It's an evocative image.
Yeah.
I thought something was going to go down with the bird.
Yeah, I know. It's a little bit exciting and then disappointing.
I think in all fiction, you shouldn't mention a bird unless it's going to talk to you. Otherwise, don't mention the birds.
Don't mention the birds.
I don't care. Luckily, in the next paragraph, he redeems himself.
So I watched the tide go out under that sinking moon, and saw gleaming the spires, the towers, and the roofs of the dead, dripping city. And as I watched, my nostrils tried to close against the perfume-conquering stench of that world's dead. For truly, in this unplaced and forgotten spot, had all the flesh of the churchyards gathered for puffy sea worms to gnaw and glut upon.
Yeah. Oh my.
Wow.
That's some intense stuff right there.
Yeah, that's some putrescent, nasty. Ugh. It gets even better in the next paragraph. He says,
Over those horrors, the evil moon now hung very low, but the puffy worms of the sea need no moon to feed by. And as I watched the ripples that told of the writhing of worms beneath, I felt a new chill from afar, out whither the condor had flown, as if my flesh had caught a horror before my eyes had seen it.
Woo.
it's a cool image.
Yeah, there's just something, he knows. I mean, he can see enough of it, but then even deeper, there's more going on. There's just hints of things. And
I love that, Lovecraft, you see a lot of repetitious turns of phrase at this point in his writing.
Yeah.
But that's a new one. My flesh had caught the horror before my eyes had.
Yeah.
I always got to give him a gold star when he figures out a new way to express horror or revulsion,
Right, yeah.
It's really good.
No, it's great. He reacts to it before he knows exactly what he's reacting to. And what he's reacting to is pretty intense.
Yeah.
Nor had my flesh trembled without cause, for when I raised my eyes, I saw that the waters had ebbed very low, showing much of the vast reef whose rim I had seen before. And when I saw that this reef was but the black basalt crown of a shocking icon, whose monstrous forehead now shone in the dim moonlight, and whose vile hooves must paw the hellish ooze miles below, I shrieked and shrieked, lest the hidden face rise above the waters, and lest the hidden eyes look at me, after the slinking away of that leering and treacherous yellow moon. And to escape this relentless thing, I plunged, gladly and unhesitatingly, into the stinking shallows, where amidst weedy walls and sunken streets, fat sea worms feast upon the world's dead.
And that's the end of this.
That's the end of the story. Yeah, that's it. The reader, or the narrator prefers death as opposed to dealing with this gigantic thing.
Whatever that beast is he's glimpsed out there, he'd rather plunge in where the sea worms are gobbling up corpses.
It's better. It's a better fate. There's this. He calls it an icon, but it's spelled E-I-K-O-N.
Right.
And I had to look that one up because I didn't know what it was. And it's
good.
just
What did you find?
It's an antiquated spelling of icon.
Oh, okay.
So it's pronounced the same way, even. It's just spelled funny. Because I was like, what the
Right.
hell's an icon? What?
Yeah.
I thought it was some crazy monster because it talks about it having hooves, but it just means
I think,
icon.
Yeah.
So,
A celebrity who's decided to call themselves an icon is usually what an icon
yeah, like Andy Dick.
is. Right. In fact, I thought I saw an iconoclast where it was Andy Dick talking to the monster from this, interviewing each other.
But, there's not... That's a very short story. It was written in June June 5th, 1922, and was first published in the National Amateur in 23. And of course, it's based on, you guessed it, a dream.
Oh.
Yeah.
This reminded me a little of, I don't know if you remember this, but years ago when we were roommates, we had a third roommate, and somebody had made some salad. It was in a bowl.
Oh, yes, I
in
do
the
remember
refrigerator, and then nobody would claim who made it or whatever.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted to clean it up, though.
No.
It was already decaying in the refrigerator.
Yeah.
So we put it outside.
On the balcony.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where it stayed.
For weeks, maybe?
Yeah, I don't know.
Days?
It
weeks?
was
I don't know, a
horrible.
long time. So, but it had a lid on it. It was like a
Yeah.
Tupperware bowl that had a lid on it. So
Right.
So
tell me if I'm remembering this correctly. I'm glad that you remember.
Oh, I remember it.
So I came out to get it finally, and we opened it up.
Yes.
And it was
it liquefied.
Yeah.
It was a brown liquid. Like,
Oh.
there was no semblance of lettuce or vegetables in there at
No.
all. It just became one, like, skin of brown liquid. And then the best part of it was things were moving.
Yes, that was the worst.
You couldn't see what was moving. You just saw, like, right underneath the skin, stuff was kind of, like, undulating or moving underneath.
That's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
So I remember that moment where I looked at it and then something kind of squirmed under that gelatinous surface.
Yeah.
Oh, we just had to throw it away.
We just picked up the whole. I don't even think I think we made Christian do it. Who was our roommate? I think Christian had to pick it up and just took it down to the dumpster and threw it away.
Yeah, the whole mass went.
It was. Yeah, I've never seen. I mean, yeah, this makes me think of that. I've tried to unremember that
I
as
know.
best I could.
When he talks about jumping in at the end, I imagine having to swim around in that salad. That was one of the worst things.
Well, moving on.
Yeah. So
Let's move along to our second story, Azathoth.
Yes.
When age fell upon the world, and wonder went out of the minds of men, when gray cities reared to smoky skies tall towers grim and ugly, in whose shadow none might dream of the sun or of spring's flowering meads, when learning stripped earth of her mantle of beauty, and poets sang no more save of twisted phantoms seen with bleared and inward-looking eyes, when these things had come to pass, and childish hopes had gone away forever, there was a man who traveled out of life on a quest into the spaces whither the world's dreams had fled.
That's the opening paragraph of Azathoth.
That is, yeah. So this is pretty. You know, like not very.
I'm trying to figure out what those sound
I
effects
don't know
mean.
what those are, man. But this is
For the listener, Chris is also moving his hands in some kind of spherical shape while he makes.
It's not very. I had to read it over a few times to figure out
Right.
what the heck was going on.
We know that there's a fella and that the world sucks.
Yeah,
And
he
that
lives
he
in this,
wants out, and so he's going to go on some quest in dreams.
right. He lives in a city too, because he talks about these giant gray, towers. I
Yeah.
think he calls them or something like that.
Yeah.
And this guy who seems very unhappy with his life. He's a poet, of course,
Right.
and loves beauty and has childish hopes.
Yep.
Not unlike Lovecraft.
That's right.
He complains basically how things in this time, in this age, don't have beauty and imagination and that type of
Yeah, and it's this fragment. It's only 3 paragraphs long.
Yeah, it's very
and,
short.
I think it was a first stab at a novel. It's just a fragment opening of a novel,
Right, yeah.
which probably is just a first draft of what became the Dream Quest of Unknown Kadam.
Exactly, yeah. There's actually Lovecraft in a letter, jumping ahead, talks about when he attempted to write this, and this is a quote from Lovecraft himself. He said,
I shall defer to no modern critical canon, but shall frankly slip back through the centuries and become a myth maker with that childish sincerity which no one but the earlier Dunsany has tried to achieve nowadays. I shall go out of the world when I write, with a mind centered not in literary usage, but in the dreams I dreamed when I was 6 years old or less, the dreams which followed my first knowledge of Sinbad, of Agib, of Baba Abdallah, and of Sidi Nanman.
when he was going to write this, he wanted to. Man, I don't know what he was thinking.
Well, yeah, I would love to have read an entire novel based on the dreams of someone who's under 6.
Would you?
Yeah.
Because, man, I don't think
It'd be
that would...
5 pages and they would all say candy. Candy! Chapter 2, candy! Chapter 3, I made a poop.
Yeah, so... Yeah, I don't...
I'm sorry.
I think he should. I think...
Getting too dismissive too fast.
Yeah, but it's... It's
a fragment.
It's a fragment. I think he had an idea. He gave it a go. You
Yeah.
know, and this is what he wanted to do. I think you're right. And I think Joshi says the same thing, that this probably was the precursor to the Dream Quest of Unknown Canal,
Right.
which also features Azathoth in there. Because this story, Azathoth isn't in there.
Right. It's called Azathoth, and we never get to.
Right.
And what is Azathoth anyway?
Well, the first mention of Azathoth is in a note he wrote to himself in 1919. It just says, Azathoth, hideous name. And then the second reference to it.
I hope that was because he's like, what's a hideous name? Azathoth. That's a hideous name? And not that he was at the bank that day and ran into some guy named Mr. Azathoth. You know, that day you just introduce yourself to somebody and you're like, yeah, it's Mr. Cockula. And you go, oh, that's an unfortunate name.
Wow, what a name. What a name. No, I think it's the latter, frankly. I think he might have met somebody or stumbled on that word and he goes, ooh, Azathoth? Ugh. Sounds like something that happens to a wound that's not treated. But there's another note that he made to himself in 1919, which says, a terrible pilgrimage to seek the knighted throne of the far demon Sultan Azathoth.
Okay.
And then we finally get to the good stuff, and I'm going to skip ahead, and I'm breaking a rule here.
Okay.
I'm going to read a quote from a future story.
Oh my.
Yes, because I feel like I was a little ripped off when I read, because I had never read Azathoth before.
Yeah.
And I read it, and there's no Azathoth. So who is Azathoth? Here you go.
Outside the ordered universe is that amorphous blight of nethermost confusion, which blasphemes and bubbles at the center of all infinity. The boundless daemon Sultan Azathoth, whose name no lips dare speak aloud, and who gnaws hungrily in inconceivable unlighted chambers beyond time and space, amidst the muffled, maddening beating of vile drums and the thin, monotonous whine of accursed flutes.
Wow.
So
Azathoth is sort of this insane intelligence.
Yeah.
Floating around in the middle of space.
Right.
Crazy colors, crazy flute playing.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, in this story, it does seem as if we might get there at some point, though, right? So
Right.
we know that wonder has fallen out of the world. We know that this guy lives in a city that is disgusting and not disgusting, but just dull and gray and boring. And he begins to watch the stars and sort of know them by name, and that becomes his respite and his escape. And then one night, very typical Lovecraft thing, a mighty gulf is bridged, right? Some kind of bridge, some kind of escalator comes down from the stars. And it says,
and the dream-haunted skies swelled down to the lonely watcher's window to merge with the close air of his room and make him a part of their fabulous wonder.
And then he tells you all the trippy stuff that is very Azathothian,
right,
but not quite.
There came to that room wild streams of violet midnight, glittering with dust of gold. Vortices of dust and fire, swirling out of the ultimate spaces and heavy with perfumes from beyond the worlds. Opiate oceans poured there, litten by suns that the eye may never behold, and having in their whirlpools strange dolphins and sea nymphs of unrememberable deeps. Noiseless infinity eddied around the dreamer and wafted him away without even touching the body that leaned stiffly from the lonely window. And for days not counted in men's calendars, the tides of far spheres bear him gently to join the dreams for which he longed, the dreams that men have lost. And in the course of many cycles, they tenderly left him sleeping on a green sunrise shore, a green shore fragrant with lotus blossoms and starred by red camelotes.
And that's the end of the story.
That is the end of the story.
So yeah, it's not much of a story. It's a fragment, and it just kind of describes a transcendent state more than anything, like him going to this dream world.
Right.
And that's it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of
It is kind of
What you gonna do? I felt a little at the beginning of that too. Gold dust of gold made me think of White Ship.
The White Ship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of kind of.
Well, this is in that.
Yeah.
I guess they call it the cycle. We refer to it that all the time, as if Lovecraft ever called it that, which I don't think he did.
No, he never did.
But this is among his, dream works.
Right. And I hate skipping ahead, but when you read the Dream Quest, a lot of this is kind of repeated again. In that.
Right.
So
it truly is a fragment.
It is a fragment. Yeah. And, I sometimes wonder if I should have skipped this story for the podcast.
Well, it did get published, though.
It was published, yeah, that's true. It was published in...
After he was dead.
After he died, though.
Yeah.
But almost everything he's published has been...
yeah, he's a little like
everything's...
Tupac in that respect. Right?
Yeah. You know, I was reading an interview on Tor.com with Kenneth Haidt, actually. And Ken was talking about how, and I thought this was really interesting just because we're talking about the publishing. He was talking about how the role-playing game really brought Lovecraft back out into mainstream society. Like
no doubt.
Before the role-playing game came out, almost all of these things weren't published.
Right.
He was talking about how there was not even a legitimate copy of Charles Dexter Ward that was out there. Somebody had come in and edited and changed things around.
Really?
And it wasn't until Joshi really jumped on it and did all the legwork that Lovecraft's real stuff is just been coming out like in the 90s. So a lot of these things were hitting. And remember when Stewart was talking about he couldn't find Reanimator. These things were really hard to get.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, Lovecraft's like all over the place. Like it's like a Lovecraft renaissance.
In fact, even right now, to tell you the truth, it seems a lot more prevalent.
It is.
Maybe I'm just thinking of because the announcement of that movie that Ron Howard was going to do, if that ever happens, or Guillermo del Toro keeps talking about Mountains of Madness, but it just seems to be coming up a lot. There was actually an article in the LA Times mid last year about H.P. Lovecraft and how there's this whole new group of people who are interested in his work and thinking about adapting it. I guess we're part of that. I guess we are,
yeah. Because, I mean, I got into it when I was so young.
Yeah.
I mean, I must have been like 13,
right.
I'm 13. So for me, it's like I've always had Lovecraft around, so it doesn't seem new to me in any... I mean, I'm 36 now. And it's always been fairly accessible to me, just because stuff's been republished more recently.
But when did the Call of Cthulhu, the role-playing game, first come out?
Like in the early 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I'm thinking 82. I don't
Sandy Peterson was the guy.
Sandy Peterson wrote it, yeah. And that really popularized Lovecraft, and I mean, with a very small culture, but...
Well, those people then go on and tell other people. And,
exactly.
We've talked about this a number of times. I'd read it before, but I think that looking at charts of the size of monsters in comparison to man really cemented what was going on in some of that fiction.
Oh, right,
that
absolutely.
was for the role-playing game, and then I went back and read a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
I think then what we're actually talking about is we're lucky that so much of the great stuff has been rediscovered.
Right.
But fragments such as this perhaps are best left in the drawer of the author.
Yeah, I really think. I mean, I think that it's okay that we're doing a very thorough investigation of his works.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of this stuff doesn't ever need to be, read. I think, just kind of...
Unless you're a completist, or,
exactly.
You have to get, if you like those deep cuts and all of the different... Or, for example, how every year they resell you the entire Beatles catalog. Not every year, but it seems that way. I heard Henry Rollins last night on the radio talking about the merits of the mono version of the Beatles catalog versus the stereo version. And he's listened to both, and he's saying, well, this was originally mixed in mono, so it's better, and you got to do,
Yeah.
I just want to... Whatever I have on CD is fine with me.
Right.
Right.
Exactly. So
for some folks, it's very important.
Yeah, I put a note in that interview with Kenneth on the show notes.
Oh, great!
So everybody can read it. It's really good, and he's such a clever guy. I mean, and we're gonna have him on the show again soon. So I'm excited about that. That's all I really have for this week.
That's all I have as well. I will say that we do have a few CDs left.
We do have a few CDs left, but not many.
Yeah.
So if you're
15 or 20,
if you're thinking about you want them, you better get them because we're not printing any more of these things.
So if you donate $20 or more, there's no longer before the end of the year because we're in 2010 now. But it'll probably be in the next couple of weeks. Those will go away. We're going to have more promotions a little later with some other great giveaways and things like that. But if you want to donate, the donate button's right there on the front page of hppodcraft.com. Give us $20 or more, we'll send you a CD. Yeah. Next week, we're doing The Horror at Martin's Beach.
Yes. This was co-written by his future wife, Sonia Green. So this should be interesting.
Right.
It'll be kind of a different sort of take on Lovecraft's work because he's doing it with somebody else.
Exactly. And it's a beach story, so there should be lots of... Pee Wee Herman shows up probably. Right. Everybody's wearing Bermudas, surfboards, sharks.
Yes, bikinis.
Yeah.
It should be pretty hot. Should be pretty cool. Also, besides next week, I want to set everybody up for this so nobody freaks out, but we're going to take a small hiatus.
That's right.
For like probably 2 weeks, maybe 3.
Yeah, we haven't figured that out.
We haven't figured that out yet because I'm getting married.
That's right.
So I'm going to be first getting married and then going on my honeymoon, which will be we're going to be gone for like 10 days. So I can't record on my honeymoon.
Right.
Sorry, guys.
And I've been trying to. I want to do a reality show. Who's going to be the next podcast co-host? The networks aren't biting yet, so we'll just have to take a
Wait a minute. Oh man. So quickly.
Sammy Hagar wasn't available. So.
Oh, that's too bad. That would have been great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I am Chris Lackey.
And I'm Chad Pfeiffer.
And this has been the HP Lovecraft Literary Podcast.
HPPodcraft.com.
HPPodcraft.com.